All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to THE Student Careers Week. I'm Jamie Ramacati, Head of Content for Student Events at THE, and I'm very happy to introduce today's webinar, How to Find and Keep a Mentor. Our speaker today is Tyler Moulton with Lumiere Education. Tyler is a 2020 Harvard graduate with a passion for education, mentorship, and research. Tyler's going to talk about the importance of mentorship, strategies for finding a potential mentor, and how to develop a relationship with your mentor. If you have questions for Tyler throughout the session, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and we will get to those questions at the end. Tyler, thanks for joining us today, and I am delighted to hand the stage over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you so much to everyone who is participating, attending today's webinar. So lovely to be chatting with you and looking forward to all your questions very soon. As Jamie mentioned, my name is Tyler Moulton, and I am currently an educator with Lumiere Education and Veritas AI. I really, really love teaching and mentorship, and I am so thrilled to talk to you guys today about how to find and keep a mentor. So to jump right into it, I really just want to talk about the fact that for me, talking about this is an incredibly meaningful discussion just because mentors were really critical to my own trajectory, from getting to a place like Harvard, from graduating from a place like this, from having all the success I do now in my career. I really would not be where I am if it is not for the people who have guided me before. So for instance, I want to just talk with you guys about a couple of key mentors who impacted me and why I think it's really important to think about mentorship critically. So in high school, I would say, I just really loved nerding out in classes. I took everything I could. And one of my key mentors was my guidance counselor, who really watched out for me in a way that no one else did at the time. She was constantly talking to me about my life on a day-to-day basis, thinking about critically where I wanted to go to college, why I want to go to different colleges. She really encouraged me to think about how I went to a very tiny public high school and there was so much more out there in the world. And then essentially a place like Harvard or a place like all these wonderful schools would involve a lot of exceptional competitive students around me, which I wasn't necessarily exposed to in high school. And I would say her guidance is really what made me ready to integrate into a place like Harvard. I would have otherwise gone there thinking I was just overprepared, just the smartest person ever. And it is due to mentors like her who grounded me and gave me a sense of reality that I was able to enter with a more maturity and an ability to handle the workload, the social environment, just all those things. A quick thing that I'll say is like a lot of other high schoolers, I kind of just fell into having a guidance counselor in high school. It was a mentor who was somewhat provided for me, let's say. What I think is really critical as everyone here begins to navigate looking for mentors, thinking about their career, is that while it's great that you'll have mentors who fall into your lap sometimes, it's also important to meaningfully search for mentors as you seek to progress in particular areas of your career or particular subject areas you're most passionate about. So the mentors that I found at Harvard were the ones who were a lot more meaningful in that respect. They were people who I were able to curate towards the goals that I had and who also fit my values at the same time. So the second mentor I wanted to talk about, for instance, was a mentor I found at the University of Cambridge the summer after my junior year at college. I spent a couple of years at this point studying astronomy and astrophysics, which is a subject area I'm really passionate about. It's an area I've done a lot of research, which is why I've gone to Lumiere Education now, a research company for high schoolers. And the mentor I found there named Dr. Simon Hodgkin was someone I sought out and contacted ahead of going there for the summer at the Institute of Astronomy at Uni of Cambridge. He was a wonderful person who I've put a lot of work over the years into keeping in touch with, into helping guide my astrophysical research. He has been there for me both personally and professionally. And without him, I can say I certainly wouldn't feel confident to engage in a research career or engage in mentorship through the companies I now do. So all of this is to say that mentors have been critical for me getting to a place with as much educational privilege as Harvard, from being able to graduate there, feel successful in the things that I'm aspiring to. And yeah, just all to say, I think mentors play a hugely critical role in our development throughout our careers. Cool. So what do I do? What I do today? So those two mentors I mentioned before were, of course, pre-college and during college. I am now post-college, of course. That is not to say I don't have mentors, but it is to say, let me give you guys a quick update on what I'm up to. So as part of my work today, I work at Lumiere Education and Veritas AI, where I am deeply involved with mentorship work. And that's something that I really think is just deeply important to me. The amount of work that mentors have put into me over the years has been something that has now inspired me to want to pay it forward and bring it to more people. And I hope a lot of you feel the same as you get into mentorship yourself or get mentored yourself in the future. So at Lumiere Education now, I work with a one-on-one research program for high school students. As part of that process, I lead interviewing selection of PhD mentors. So I have a lot of insights into what we think are critical factors when finding the right mentor for you from a general sense and cater to you. I also personally mentor students in my role as a publication specialist as head of the Writing Center. So I work with students on logistical aspects of the research processes. I, as mentioned, had a lot of mentors in undergrad like Simon, who are critical to my growth as a researcher. And it makes me just both thrilled to be able to give that to students moving forward. At Veritas AI, I also work as part of an AI bootcamp for high school students and am involved in one-on-one project mentorship there for some of our students doing AI and astronomy work and help build partnerships with other organizations and outreach. Cool. So I want to take a quick pause. If everyone wouldn't mind, can you put into the Q&A function, what does a mentor mean to you? I'd love to hear some thoughts from a couple of you, and I'll read them out loud of what a mentor means. So throw your answers in the Q&A section, and I am going to be really excited to read out a couple of answers. Okay, everyone, I'm going to give you about a minute. If a couple of you could throw an answer in the chat just on what a mentor means to you, that would be lovely. Okay, thank you all so much for putting your answers in the chat. I deeply appreciate it. I'm going to read out a couple slightly different ones. If you don't hear yours called, I appreciate all of these so much. Just kind of have only a limited amount of time right now. So Martina put down the first one. So someone who is has a broader view and more experience than you, who's able to guide your thoughts and interests to make them more realistic and achievable. I love this. Mentors are people who have a ton more experience than us. They know how to materialize or make tangible goals that we may have only conceived of or imagined. And so they are people who can really help us ground the work that we want to do or help us, make more tangible the goals we're driving towards. I really like what Arshia put down, someone who has the same values and goals in life as you, who you can follow and learn from. A quick thing that I will say is not every mentor I've had has shared my values. I think that is something that is important to note. But the mentors that I've had that I have valued most deeply and that I have most easily integrated their relationships with into my life, it's been most easy to keep that relationship up, are people who do share my values, who care about the same things. For instance, I care a lot about educational equity and access. I need my mentors to care about those things too in the research field and teaching fields I've been in. And I would say generally, Arshia, I'm 100% on board with you. I think sharing values is really critical for that mentor to guide you in a way that is meaningful to you and meaningful to your upcoming growth. And then I'll just read one more here. So anonymous attendee, my favorite name ever, wrote, a mentor is someone who guides me in the initial process of my growth and development in a particular field and also helps me understand my prospects based on my individual needs and abilities. So a quick thing that I will note is that mentors aren't always there for you at the initial outset. So sometimes mentors are there for you as you're growing in the field. Maybe you're at the end of your career, you can still find mentors. So I think an important thing to note is that they're there for you for your growth and development in a particular field at any stage in your career as you need it. And a big thing that I will say also is, I think a few of you might have mentioned that mentors are typically older. I would say this is on average true because who are you going to find who has more experience than you, if not someone who's older? But generally speaking, a mentor is just someone who has a bit more experience than you in an area where you'd like to grow and has willingness to place into you their time and helping you grow in those ways or helping you grow in that field. Cool. So thank you everyone for your answers again. Really appreciate that. Flash, I think a lot of you are on the right track for sure in terms of thinking about what a meaningful mentor means. So let's define mentor a bit more objectively. So who is a mentor? According to Oxford Learner's Dictionary, it is an experienced person who advises and helps somebody with less experience over a period of time. Let's break that down a little bit. So an experienced person is someone who's usually older, but it's always someone in your field or area of interest with more experience than you, or let's say more years put into that subject than you, or more particular time on a particular area. Advises and help is someone who's there to provide you any kind of intellectual, emotional, and material support. A really big thing I want to say to everyone here is that not all my mentors have been people who've advanced my career. It's not always, driving towards the next thing, so to speak. I've had dearly valued mentors who have even been some of my best friends, my same age, who have been there for me in an emotional sense or in a more personal sense. And those people have helped show me what it means to be a better friend to others. It helped showed me how to demonstrate care for people more effectively, even in my professional relationships aside. So I think it's important to know that someone who advises and helps you is mentoring. A big thing that my friend once taught me is the idea of co-mentorship. A lot of us co-mentor each other all the time, but I digress because that is getting a bit too into the weeds. First six, the last part of it is just over a period of time. So big thing I'll note is that it's important in mentorship relationships to build this relationship over a period of time. A big thing that I will note, for instance, is that my mentor from undergrad, Simon, that I mentioned earlier, is someone who I've been working with now for, 3 years, which is just crazy to think about now. But it wouldn't be for the length of time we've been working together for me to have so much trust in him and his ability to guide me. So I really think it's important to note that the definition of mentor given here is one that has some key components that we break down bit by bit, which all have value in themselves. Cool. So here's a list of examples of potential mentors you might have faced in your life. So teachers, coaches, parents and family, religious leaders, other members of the community. There's lots of ways or areas where we can find mentors. When you get to college, it'll be teachers becoming professors, coaches becoming extracurricular advisors, all those fun transitions. But for now, this is a good list of leaders or people you can look to in your life who may be mentors to you already, or who could become potential mentors to you if accessible. Cool. So mentorship is incredibly important for so many reasons. And so seeking out all the people that I just mentioned in this page as you feel relevant can be so meaningful for your growth. So according to youth.gov, there are so many benefits of mentorship for youth. And I can attest to so many of them in terms of my own self-growth and development. So people who see mentorship rates directly correlate with increased high school graduation rates, lower dropout rates. There's a lot of students demonstrate in survey-based work better attitude towards school or towards their professional activities. There's an enhanced self-esteem and self-confidence for sure. If I did not have people who believed in me in high school, I would have struggled to find that myself. And so having mentors was so critical to me in that time. We also see that there's stronger relationships with parents, teachers, peers, improved interpersonal skills. That's a big thing I mentioned earlier. I have found in all my mentors an increased ability to care for others and decreased likelihood of initiating drug and alcohol use. So just so many reasons here to be conscientious of why mentorship and seeking it out can benefit us in the long run. Cool. Mentorship is incredibly important for so many other reasons. So if you didn't like this list of what are, let's argue, data-based or data-driven outcomes, you can also look at some more anecdotal evidence, such as all the insights from some of these world thought leaders and world sort of just leaders generally who've talked about how important mentorship is. Oprah Winfrey's reflected on mentorship before. Steve Jobs has reflected on mentorship. Even Isaac Newton, hundreds of years ago now, says, I've seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Indeed, as we think about the fact that technology, human knowledge, all these things grow year on year, it is because mentors pass the torch, so to speak, onto their mentees and allow us to carry forward in time in that way. Cool. So 4 big myths about mentorship. So this is a really fun output from a Harvard Business Review article. So Amy Gallo writes in the Harvard Business Review about 4 key myths of mentorship. So the first one is you have to find one perfect mentor. So it's important to realize that one mentor can't help you with every part of your life. As I mentioned earlier, I've had mentors who have been there for me from a personal, emotional, or mental health standpoint, as opposed to professional standpoints. You can't expect one mentor to be able to give you help in every area of your life. And so it's important to seek mentors in different areas so that you can grow in different ways. It's also important to be conscientious of the fact that not every mentor can or is willing to give you every piece of themselves or help you grow in every way. And so it's important to balance or respect your mentors in giving them space for more mentors to come in and fill those roles. Cool. Myth number two, mentoring is a formal long-term relationship. So mentorship is very rarely formal in my experience. I would say none of my best mentors have been ones that have been forced to mentor me or have been in a contract with me or anything like that. It's just people who are watching out for me as older educators or who are just dear friends, as even I mentioned, who are just looking out for me. So you don't usually apply to get a mentor. That's not the case. Typically, you find a mentor through the development of a relationship over time. A big thing I will say is that I don't even think just having a teacher means they initially become a mentor. Typically, mentorship is something that you develop over a period of time through demonstrated care for each other and clear communication on wanting to grow in a certain way the mentor can offer. That helps you develop, but it doesn't have to be a set period of time you're being mentored. It doesn't have to be certain conditions. It can look a lot of different ways. Cool. So mentoring is for junior people. So nope, not at all. I mentioned this earlier. You can need mentors throughout every single stage of your life and career and everything. Over time, your mentors might have become more thought partners, out sounding boards, and exclusive sources of advice. This is an important thing to realize. And I think is one of the most deeply valuable parts of my growing into my career. Your mentors are people who, as you grow older, they will slowly start to become akin to friends to you. They will slowly start to become colleagues of yours because you're coming closer and closer to the same age. Of course, you will always have a deep and just contributed sense of respect for all the work they've done for you, but that is something that comes over time, and it's just so valuable as you grow into yourself and start to become the professional they were hoping you would become because that's how they were mentoring you. Cool. And then finally, myth number four, mentoring is something more experienced people do out of the goodness of their hearts. I would say this is an important thing / a good perspective to take, but ultimately it is still a myth because not all mentors are just altruistically motivated. They aren't just doing it for the sake of doing good. But it's important to remember mentors get something out of it too. And it's really important to remember that because you as a mentee should be providing some level of support to your mentor. Mentors are probably getting benefits out of teaching you. By teaching people, oftentimes we learn more about the subject or we more deeply ingrain that knowledge in our mind. So mentoring someone helps us improve. We get intellectual enjoyment out of it. So I love working with students at Lumiere because I love helping kids cultivate their research skill sets. And that's something that's valuable to me, not just to the students. So ultimately, remember that your mentors should benefit from the relationship you have with one another, and your mentors should be finding spaces to grow as well as you are. And from that perspective, ultimately, I would say always keep in mind and be thoughtful of the mentors in your life, because if they aren't feeling benefited or if they aren't growing in certain ways, you should always be looking for ways to help them in the same ways that they are helping you. Although take that with a grain of salt, because of course they have a bit more experience in their purview as compared to you, the mentee. Phenomenal. So last couple slides here are getting into how to find a mentor as a student. So you can find mentors in your community. So we talked about earlier, family, religious leaders, different people that you have around you. You can find it through cold or warm outreach. So genuinely speaking, you can find mentors by reaching out to people who are in certain businesses you like or at certain universities you like and asking them for their advice or for their thoughts in terms of your future planning. Sometimes just a simple cold email to someone random can lead into a beautiful mentorship relationship that sparks the rest of your life, for instance. I met Simon, who I have now mentioned one too many times today, because I initially signed up to work with a different professor at Uni of Cambridge. That professor fell through due to her own personal issues that summer. And so as a consequence, I reached out to Simon just randomly via email because I found his name on the Institute of Astronomy website. That cold email sparked into one of the most deeply impactful relationships I've had in my professional life. And so, yeah, cold emails or random emails you send out to people can make a big difference. Yep, and then through structured mentorship programs. So places like Lumiere Education offer structured ways to find mentors because we pair students with PhDs that are doing work deeply related to the work that our students are excited about. So sometimes you can use a program to help you find a mentor in a lot more of an easy fashion. Cool. So last thing here is just that it's important to follow up and follow through. So remember that your mentors are people too. I mentioned this earlier. Remember that you cannot be the only one benefiting from a mentor-mentee relationship. It is so, so critical that both you and your mentor are growing and are gaining value from the work that you're doing together. So remember that because mentors are people too, there's some key rules here you always want to practice, or that we here at Lumia recommend when thinking about holding on to your mentor. So first, when you have to ask for something, or you have an ask, let's call it, that is a time where you want a recommendation letter, or you want something specific as a favor from your mentor. Make sure to be clear and as clear and specific as possible. When asking a mentor for time, it is so important that you are as conscientious of that time as possible. So being clear in your communication or clear in what you need from them is so critical for that being true. So this second one, I really encourage everyone to really just embody. It's so easy to bump someone if they don't respond for a week or more. Especially now during COVID, where people have what is known as, COVID brain fog, or people struggle with more executive functioning as compared to previously in terms of getting back to emails, responding to virtual communication, etc. It's important to know that people will miss emails a lot, people will miss messages all the time. And so from that standpoint, when you don't hear from someone and it's been a long enough period of time, say a week, it's respectful at that point in time to bump them again. Nothing wrong with that at all. And it's good to reach out just to see if they've missed you or if everything's okay. And of course, because your mentor is someone you care about, to check in on them in case they are not doing well. Cool. So for number 3, if what you're asking them has a timeline, make sure to remind them. So if you're asking mentors, for instance, as I mentioned earlier, for rec letters, I would always say, ask always at least 2 months out, and then make sure that a month in and then 2 weeks in, you're giving clear reminders on when that deadline is. It's important to remember that when you ask your mentor for a favor and they agree to do it, yes, they are accountable, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's still your favor that you need them to follow through on. And so your responsibility to be clear on communication there and to help make sure it happens. So number 4, if you ask a mentor for advice on a situation or help, make sure to follow up by emailing them with an update on what happened. They'll appreciate that. That is so important to know. Mentors don't want to just live in a black box. They want you to provide support on how they're doing. One mistake that I once personally made is with a dear friend of mine who was just a year older than me, helping me navigate finding jobs after college. She spent, I would say, a couple hours every week for a month, just getting on calls with me, helping me look for different opportunities, consider my options. After a month, I found a job, and then I completely forgot to update her about it. So we just didn't talk for a couple of weeks. And when I posted on social media about it, she was a little upset, and she was a little hurt that I didn't talk to her in the first place. And I completely understand why. She was so critical to my accomplishments. She was so critical to helping me, and I was so careless of me to forget that. So never forget to thank your mentors or remind them how their advice helped you or helped you learn a little bit along the way. And that leads perfectly to number 5, show your gratitude. Always send thank yous. Always, I would encourage you, go the extra mile to try and make sure your mentor knows how valued they are and how much you care about them. A big thing or a big tip I've gotten from some dear friends of mine that has, I think, shown a lot of value in my own life is thank you notes are exceptionally important, and that can be an email, but if you want to go off the cuff, send a physical thank you note. It'll really blow mentors away. Never expensive, but getting little gifts for mentors can be really impactful if it's something within your resources. So yes, show as much and all gratitude that you can, and it will go the extra mile in terms of bettering that mentorship relationship for yourself, for them, and for everyone involved. But yeah, that is everything from me today, guys. I would love to answer any questions from the Q&A or chat with anyone about just anything that you'd like to hear more about in terms of mentorship, my experience, or anything like that.
Tyler, thank you so much for that. I think that's incredibly helpful for the students in our audience. There's a couple of questions I want to pose to you that came in. One says, earlier you mentioned that mentorship isn't something forced. It usually isn't super formal, but it can be harder with online learning and having to communicate virtually with potential mentors. This student says that actually their university assigned tutors at the beginning of the first year, and that they're really struggling to build a relationship with their tutor or mentor and to learn as much as possible from them. Any advice or recommendations on how to build a relationship with a mentor in this virtual environment where it can feel a little bit more difficult to make that meaningful connection?
Yeah, of course. So couple sides of, there's 2 things I kind of want to address here. So first and foremost, I would say that mentorship isn't something that can always come perfectly easily. So I think it's important to, as part of that relationship, because this tutor's been assigned to you, for instance, just keep up in terms of offering gratitude, offering support to your mentor. And by support, I don't mean sort of, tutoring them back. That's not a possibility. But instead, of course, just thinking about offering them, being flexible in your schedule when you're able to, making sure that they feel as though you are there for them as much as possible. And so I would say sometimes it's really hard to build a relationship, even more so over Zoom, but just putting in the effort or putting in the continued time is what's most critical. For instance, I would say with Simon, my mentor from U Cambridge, I don't even think I would call him like a close mentor by the end of the summer I was there. It was really a year in after doing my senior thesis, after working together for so long that mentorship felt meaningful. So watch out for time because it does a lot of work. The second thing I'll also say is sometimes in situations like this where you're kind of assigned a mentor, it's not always going to work out perfectly. Mentors, sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, should share your values. It should be someone you get along with naturally. There's so many people out there, so many fish in the sea, so to speak. So you should be able to search for different mentors that fit what you need. So just know that if this tutor isn't the perfect fit, you should seek to your university and ask about whether or not you can shop, so to speak, for another tutor, or ask around for someone else who might be a better fit, because mentor shopping or searching for mentors in a meaningful and thoughtful, of course, way is critical to finding the right mentor for you.
Thanks, Tyler. We only have just a couple of minutes left, and I wonder, one of the things I want to make sure we leave students with is, some really sort of tangible next steps in terms of finding a mentor. And for students who maybe have someone in mind, either a teacher, a former teacher, a professor, or someone that they've worked with maybe at an internship or something like that, what would you recommend including in an initial communication to one of those people, sort of asking that for their support or their help as a mentor? What kinds of things should students be asking for? I think that can often be sort of the most daunting part of this, is maybe you have someone in mind, but just taking that first step to kind of ask them for their help can be difficult. So if there's sort of one thing we can leave students with, what would that advice be for making that sort of initial communication to start that mentorship relationship?
Of course, yeah. So from my perspective, mentorship is something that develops over time. I don't think you can ever just, with that first cold email, for instance, think that you've now acquired a mentor because they responded to you. And so my kind of two biggest pieces of advice in how to approach that first email, that first outreach, that first contact is be genuine, one, and don't be transactional, two. Make sure that you are being conscientious and genuine with the mentor that you are trying to acquire by just telling them what it is about their work that interests you, why you're reaching out, what you're looking for. I would say make sure that you're not too jumping the gun in terms of just asking them for mentorship, but it's important to let them know that you respect them, you're really interested in what they do, and you'd like to learn more about it through a simple call or through some more communication. So yes, reach out to people who you have a genuine interest in learning from, and be incredibly candid and honest in what you want from them. And that is going to be the most important thing to setting the tone for a meaningful and honest relationship.
Tyler, thanks so much for your time today. I think this has been really, really useful for students. It's a great way for us to start our THE Student Careers Week. For our students in the audience, thanks for joining us, and be sure to go back to the THE Student Careers Week page to see the rest of the sessions that we have throughout the week. We're covering lots of different topics related to employability, careers, building skills that employers are looking for. So we hope to see you on a session in the coming days. Tyler, thanks again for your expertise, and we wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you all for participating. It's been so lovely chatting with you. Bye, all.
Bye, everyone.